1999 in New York, the Elephant nightclub was rented out by four young men. They were full of youthful energy and high spirits, and Jackson was the coolest among them. Because his girlfriend Felicia betrayed him, he lost a bet with his friends and was forced to strip. His friends crowded around the dressing room, urging him to go on stage. Jackson was expressionless, his heart filled with helplessness and anger. Meanwhile, Jessica Davis stumbled into the nightclub. She had just arrived in New York to study and was full of curiosity about the unfamiliar city. She had a stomachache and hurried into the Elephant through the back door to use the restroom. When she came out, she saw the handsome Jackson dancing on stage. Amidst the music, Jackson moved gracefully, his movements full of power and beauty. Jessica Davis watched spellbound, raising the pocket camera in her hand to record this incredible scene. "Jackson, get it off!" his friends jeered. Jackson glared at them and, following the music's rhythm, began to unbutton his leather jacket. Jessica Davis's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. When Jackson took off his leather pants too, she was stunned speechless. And when his underwear flew off and landed squarely on her head, she gasped, her face bright red, and fled the scene in a panic. Jessica Davis returned to her apartment. That night, she had nightmare after nightmare. In her dreams, she was always covered by that black underwear, unable to break free. This nightmare haunted her for 4 whole years, a persistent shadow that caused her immense pain. 4 years later, in Chicago, Jessica Davis finished her life in New York and returned to Chicago. Chloe, her boyfriend Ethan's sister, who was lively and sweet, invited her out for a welcome meal. The gathering took place at a casual burger joint. Chloe was full of enthusiasm, but Jessica Davis was distracted. Chloe dragged her to a bar for a second round. Jessica Davis didn't really want to go, but Chloe pulled her into the car. The bar was noisy and chaotic. Jessica Davis couldn't stand it and excused herself to go to the restroom. The restroom was in the back, relatively quiet. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and enjoyed a moment of peace. Suddenly, a deep male voice spoke. "Are you okay?" She jumped up, opened her eyes, and saw none other than Jackson, the man she had seen 4 years ago in New York. Jackson was strikingly handsome, with a tall, sturdy build, but his eyes held a cold indifference. Jessica Davis was startled and thrilled, rubbing her eyes, afraid it was a hallucination. She blurted out, "Is that you?" But Jackson's face was calm. "Do we know each other?" Jessica Davis froze. He didn't remember her? But that face, that physique, she could never be mistaken. No, we don't," she stammered, shaking her head. Jackson glanced at her and turned to leave. Jessica Davis panicked and grabbed his arm. Why are you here?" Jackson's face was cold. "Miss, my business is none of yours, is it?" With that, he strode away. Jessica Davis stood rooted to the spot, felt a mix of emotions. Watching his retreating back, an inexplicable impulse surged within her. She followed him out and dragged him into an alleyway. Jackson's face darkened. "What do you want?" Jessica Davis mustered her courage. "I just want to tell you, people have dignity." Jackson snorted. "Well, let me tell you, I have a temper." Jessica Davis's face fell. He was so heartless. "Sir, please stop doing striptease. I know you'll say it's a form of art, but does art really have to be like this, naked? Don't you think parading your body in front of others is something to be ashamed of?" Jessica Davis grew more agitated as she spoke. Jackson's eyes widened. This woman actually knew about the past he least wanted to mention? "I don't know what you're talking about," he said coldly, turning to leave. But Jessica Davis grabbed him. "You're not getting away. I couldn't be mistaken. I'd recognize you anywhere. I have a video recording of you stripping, and I even have your underwear." Jackson was dumbfounded by this. He grabbed her sharply. "What did you say?" Jessica Davis shrank back in fear but still finished her sentence. "One time when you were practicing on stage, you threw your underwear, and it landed on my head." A flicker of realization crossed Jackson's eyes. So she was the girl who had stumbled in that night. He sneered, "Miss, I've had enough of your slander. I'm a man of status and position, definitely not the stripper you claim I am. But Jessica Davis stubbornly shook her head. I know it's you. I'm sure it's you. He laughed in exasperation. All right, name your price. For the master tape you secretly filmed and hush money to keep you quiet, how much will it take? Jessica Davis was speechless for a moment. She had never intended to blackmail him. She just wanted to help him. Since that underwear landed on my head, do you know how much money I've spent seeing a therapist over the past 4 years? Can money make up for the emotional damage? The same nightmare has haunted me for 4 whole years. She grew angrier as she spoke, tears welling up in her eyes. Jackson was left speechless by her words, but he still couldn't bring himself to believe her story. The next day, Jessica Davis woke up early. She quickly ate breakfast and heard a horn downstairs. It was Blake, the vice president of Aerowind Airlines, in his Ferrari sports car. He had come to pick her up for work. Jessica Davis looked helpless and had to steel herself and go downstairs. Blake's car was incredibly flashy. As it drove through the streets of Chicago, people's eyes followed it. He was quite pleased with himself and paid no attention to Jessica Davis's complaints. Miss, your neighbors will only be envious of you. After all, not every woman gets picked up in a Ferrari. Jessica Davis snorted, I don't care about that. She was feeling very uneasy, worried about being late on her first day of work. When they arrived at the company, Blake led Jessica Davis directly into the elevator. Inside the elevator, Jessica Davis was a bundle of nerves. She hadn't gone through the hiring process for Aerowind Airlines and didn't know what position Blake had arranged for her. The elevator doors opened, and Blake led her to the HR department. This is the new secretary, Ms. Davis, Blake said to the HR manager. Jessica Davis was stunned. Secretary? What was going on? The HR manager looked at Blake, then at Jessica Davis. Mr. Vice President, this isn't standard procedure. A position change like this requires the CEO's approval. Blake shrugged. I just did it and dealt with the process later. Anyway, it's already decided, so I'd appreciate it if you could handle the arrangements. Jessica Davis was even more bewildered. What was this about? Her mind was full of questions. Just then, a deep voice called out, Who is it? Jessica Davis turned and saw it was Jackson. He was standing at the entrance to the CEO's office, his face filled with rage. It turned out that Blake had arranged for Jessica Davis to join the company while he was away, and Jackson had no idea, which infuriated him. Mr. Miller, I work here. Jessica Davis was a little afraid of him, but she still bravely replied. Jackson scoffed. This isn't a place you can just wander into. He strode quickly towards Jessica Davis. Blake quickly tried to smooth things over. Jackson, this is all a misunderstanding. I'll take her back right now. But Jessica Davis stood her ground stubbornly. Mr. Miller, I'm your secretary. I have work to do. Jackson was furious. He called Blake, demanding he come over immediately. Blake walked into the office with a playful grin. Jackson pointed at Jessica Davis and questioned him, Was this your doing? Blake feigned innocence. I was just trying to help you out. Secretary Susan has been under a lot of stress lately, so I gave her a vacation and found her a temporary secretary. Jessica Davis watched from the side, understanding that this was all Blake's prank. Stop messing around, get her out of here. Jackson was exasperated. But Blake just laughed and shook his head. I don't have time. I've got a plane to catch for a signing in Zurich. With that, he waved his hand and left the office suavely. Jackson's face was ashen with anger, but Jessica Davis secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She knew that with Blake involved, she'd likely be able to keep the job. Jackson took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. He looked at Jessica Davis, his gaze complex. I'll give you one last chance. Leave now, or you'll regret it later. Jessica Davis bit her lip and looked up. Mr. Miller, it's my first day, and if you just fire me like this, I'll be really embarrassed. She tried to look as pathetic as possible. Jackson fell silent. Looking at Jessica Davis looking tearful, he felt a strange reluctance. He suddenly said, I'll find you another job instead. As soon as he said it, he froze. This was completely out of character for him. Jessica Davis was also stunned, then broke into a surprised smile. Really? Thank you so much. Jackson, however, felt a bit restless. He hadn't expected himself to say something like that, but seeing Jessica Davis happy, he felt a little comforted. He knew he couldn't refuse this woman anymore, even though she held leverage over him. In the following days, Jackson and Jessica Davis had frequent contact at work. Jackson realized that Jessica Davis's work ability was not to be underestimated. She was diligent, responsible, and eager to learn. Although Jackson often made things difficult for her, assigning her many extra tasks, Jessica Davis always gritted her teeth and persevered. As time went on, Jackson found himself caring more and more about Jessica Davis. Every time he saw her busy figure, a wave of tenderness would surge in his heart. But whenever he remembered that she had threatened him with the video recording, a hint of bitterness would surface. He tried to bury these feelings deep down, but whenever he saw her smile, his heart would involuntarily soften. One time, Jackson asked Jessica Davis to rush an important report. In her haste, she ran out of the office wearing her slippers. She rushed back and forth between the accounting department and the sales department, getting completely out of breath. Finally, she handed the report to Jackson within the deadline. Jackson looked at her panting, and besides being surprised, he felt a pang of concern. Why did you run so fast? You didn't even have time to change your shoes, he asked, concerned. Jessica Davis looked down at her slippers, and her face instantly turned red. She quickly explained, I didn't realize how quickly time was passing. I was afraid of delaying you. Jackson shook his head and chuckled, but his heart had a new appreciation for her dedication. Another day, Jackson saw Jessica Davis in the office forcefully patting her cheeks, trying to wake herself up. He walked over and asked with concern, "What are you doing?" Jessica Davis blushed with embarrassment. Nothing, I'm just a little tired." Jackson sat beside her and gently massaged her shoulders. "Don't overwork yourself. It pains me." Jessica Davis's body stiffened, and she abruptly jumped up, moving far away from him. A wry smile appeared on Jackson's face. He knew that this woman's heart wouldn't be easily won. One afternoon, the company closed early. Jessica Davis stayed late to organize files, and Jackson was also in his office handling matters. Occasionally, their eyes would meet, and they would quickly look away. A subtle atmosphere filled the office. Jackson suddenly stood up and walked over to Jessica Davis. "It's a nice day today. Want to grab dinner together?" Jessica Davis looked up in surprise. Her heart pounded. "No thanks, I brought my own sandwich." Jackson frowned slightly, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "All right then, eat by yourself." With that, he turned and left. Jessica Davis stared at his retreating back, filled with regret. She knew she had strong feelings for Jackson, but she was afraid to take that step. She was afraid of ruining their current relationship, afraid of facing an uncertain future. Meanwhile, Ethan was at his home in New York, thinking about Jessica Davis. He looked at old photos of them together, his heart filled with longing. He decided to fly to Chicago soon to give Jessica Davis a surprise. A few days later, Ethan arrived in Chicago and went straight to Jessica Davis's apartment building. He rang the doorbell. When Jessica Davis opened the door and saw him, her jaw dropped in surprise. As soon as Ethan entered, he hugged her tightly. Jessica Davis felt a mix of emotions. Ethan took Jessica Davis to a high-end hotel for dinner. At the table, he attentively served her food and drinks. Jessica Davis, however, was full of anxiety. There were so many things she wanted to say to him, but every time she started to speak, Ethan would interrupt her. "What's wrong? Is something bothering you?" Ethan put down his chopsticks and looked at her gently. Jessica Davis bit her lip. "Ethan, I have something I need to tell you." Ethan smiled. "Let's talk about it after dinner." After dinner, Ethan suddenly brought up the topic of engagement. "We've been together for a year now. It's time to pick a date to get engaged." Jessica Davis was so startled she almost dropped the cup she was holding. "Engaged?" She shook her head frantically. There's no rush. Let's wait until you're settled first. Ethan smiled faintly, a hint of loneliness in his eyes. Jessica, I don't know what you're still worried about. You should know me well by now. I promise I'll make you happy. Jessica Davis's heart ached. She knew Ethan was sincere, but her heart simply couldn't return the same deep affection. That same evening, Jackson was dining at the same hotel. He saw Ethan and Jessica Davis leaving intimately from afar, and his heart felt like it was being stabbed. He violently threw the wine glass in his hand onto the floor. The sharp sound of shattering glass made the surrounding guests look over. Mr. Miller, what is this? The waiter looked at him in shock. Jackson took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart. It's nothing. The check. He tossed down a credit card and left the hotel without looking back. Back home, Jackson poured himself a glass of whiskey and downed it in one gulp. He gazed out at the myriad lights in the windows, his heart full of longing for Jessica Davis. He knew he shouldn't pursue her anymore, but he just couldn't let go. Meanwhile, Ethan took Jessica Davis to a romantic restaurant. He looked at Jessica Davis affectionately. Jessica, I love you. I want to build a home with you. Jessica Davis's heart was a mess. She didn't know how to respond and could only fiddle with the cutlery in her hands. Ethan suddenly took her hand. I know what you're still worried about, but please trust me, I will make you happy. A hint of sadness flashed in Jessica Davis's eyes. She knew Ethan was a good man, but her heart no longer belonged to him. Just then, Ethan's phone rang. He answered it, and his expression instantly turned strange. From the other end of the line came a deep voice. Mr. Song, your fiancé seems a bit reluctant. Would you like me to lend a hand? Ethan hung up the phone, a hidden shadow crossing his face. He said softly to Jessica Davis, "Sweetheart, wait for me for a moment." With that, he got up and went to the restroom. Jessica Davis sat in her seat, her heart filled with suspicion. She looked around and noticed several men in black clothes in the restaurant. Their eyes occasionally swept towards her table. Unconscious. Sly, Jessica Davis clenched her fists. Ethan came out of the restroom and went straight to the bar. He took a small bottle from his pocket, which contained white powder. He walked over to Jessica Davis, pretending to pour her some wine, and took the opportunity to pour the powder into her cup. Come on, let's toast to our future. Ethan raised his glass, a gentle smile on his face. Jessica Davis looked at him uneasily. Where did you just go? Ethan chuckled softly. Just stepped away for a moment. Don't overthink it. Jessica Davis held the wine glass, her fingers trembling slightly. She didn't know the wine had been drugged, but she felt the atmosphere tonight was somehow strange. She pushed the glass aside. I don't really feel like drinking. Ethan's face darkened. You don't like the surprise I prepared for you? Jessica Davis looked at him in horror. What surprise? Ethan didn't say anything more. He simply picked up the glass and gently pressed her head down, forcing her to drink the wine. Jessica Davis wanted to resist, but her body wouldn't obey. She felt a wave of dizziness, and everything in front of her began to blur. Seeing this, Ethan's face twisted into a cruel smile. You're finally mine. Jessica Davis slumped into Ethan's arms, her consciousness fading. She vaguely saw Ethan take out a key and open the door to a hotel suite. She wanted to cry out for help, but no sound came out. She could only watch as Ethan carried her into the room. Ethan closed the door, a twisted smile on his face. You'll finally be mine. He placed Jessica Davis on the large bed and began to unbutton her clothes. Jessica Davis struggled desperately, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Tears flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. She thought of Jackson, of his gentle eyes. How she wished someone would save her now, even if it was just Jackson. Just as Ethan was about to succeed, the door was violently kicked open. Jackson stood in the doorway, looking at Ethan with furious rage. What are you doing? Jackson roared. Ethan turned back in shock, his hand frozen in midair. Jackson charged towards Ethan like an enraged lion. You animal! He threw Ethan to the ground and then rushed to Jessica Davis's side. He gently caressed her cheek, his eyes full of concern. Jessica, are you okay? Jessica Davis was in tears, her voice weak. Jackson, you came for me. Her consciousness gradually faded, and she finally passed out. Jackson glared at Ethan, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Ethan was terrified by his gaze and forced a smile. Mr. Miller, that's not like you. You wouldn't ruin your reputation for a woman, would you? Jackson scoffed. You think I wouldn't? He strode towards Ethan and grabbed him by the throat. You beast in human clothing, he roared, slamming Ethan against the wall. If you dare let her come to any harm, I will show you no mercy. Ethan's face turned red as Jackson choked him, and he struggled desperately. Just then, the hotel security, alerted by the commotion, arrived and pulled the two men apart. Jackson snorted, turned, picked up Jessica Davis, and strode out of the room. He took Jessica Davis to the hospital. After examining her, the doctor said she was fine, only needing to stay overnight for observation. Jackson stayed by her bedside, not leaving for a moment. Night fell, and the hospital was silent. Jessica Davis gradually woke up and saw Jackson watching over her by the bedside. A complex emotion flickered in her eyes. You're awake, Jackson said softly, his gaze gentle. Jessica Davis wanted to speak but found her throat dry. Jackson quickly handed her a glass of water. Drink some water. The doctor said it will help dilute the effects of the medication in your system. Jessica Davis took the cup and drank the water with trembling hands. She looked at Jackson, her heart filled with guilt. Jackson, I'm sorry. Jackson held her hand and said softly, don't say that. This isn't your fault. I just wanted you to be safe. His eyes were full of affection, making Jessica Davis's heart tremble. She lowered her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I shouldn't have let you see me like this, so helpless. Jackson gently lifted her chin, making her look at him. In my eyes, you're always strong and beautiful. Don't let those unpleasant experiences define you. Jessica Davis's heart warmed, and the tears in her eyes finally broke free. She hugged Jackson tightly, burying her head on his shoulder. Jackson patted her back, gently comforting her. After a long while, Jessica Davis finally let go of him, her eyes filled with determination. Jackson, I'm tired. I want to rest. Jackson nodded and gently tucked her in. Go ahead and sleep. I'll stay here with you. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window onto Jessica Davis's face. She slowly opened her eyes and saw Jackson standing by the window, watching her with a faint smile on his face. Her heart couldn't help but beat faster, and a feeling she had never experienced before spread within her. Jackson walked to the bedside and took her hand. How are you feeling? Jessica Davis nodded softly. Much better. Thank you for still being here. His eyes became even more gentle. I promised I would protect you, so of course, I'd stay here. Just then, a nurse walked into the room, holding a report. She handed it to Jackson. Mr. Miller, the test results are in. Ms. Davis is perfectly fine and can be discharged. Jackson took the report and looked at it carefully, a relieved smile on his face. That's great. We can start preparing the discharge paperwork then. The nurse nodded and left the room with a smile. Jessica Davis looked at Jackson, her heart full of gratitude. If you hadn't gotten there in time, I don't know what would have happened. He shook his head gently. Don't think about that. The important thing is you're okay now. A look of determination appeared in his eyes. No one will ever hurt you again. Just then, Jessica Davis's phone rang. She answered it, and it was Ethan calling. On the phone, he was tearful. Jessica, where are you? I'm so worried about you. Let's meet up. Jessica Davis hesitated and looked at Jackson. He gently shook his head. Don't see him. He's not someone you can easily get rid of. She took a deep breath and said into the phone, Ethan, I don't want to see you right now. We need to cool down. With that, she hung up the phone. On Ethan's end, his face instantly turned ashen. He clenched his phone tightly, his eyes full of rage. You think you can get rid of me like this? It's not that easy. He violently threw the phone to the ground and turned to leave the room. Meanwhile, Jackson was helping Jessica Davis pack her things for discharge. He saw her looking thoughtful and asked softly, "What are you thinking about?" She looked up. "I'm wondering what's going to happen between us." He smiled faintly. "Whatever happens, I believe we can face it together." A week later, the streets of Chicago were still bustling with traffic. Jackson and Jessica Davis walked hand in hand, laughing and talking. They had officially started a relationship. Although Jessica Davis was still a little curious about Jackson's past, she chose to trust him, just as he chose to trust her. Meanwhile, Ethan was on the other side of Chicago, sitting alone in a bar. He was playing with a ring in his hand, his eyes filled with loneliness. "Jessica, do you really not love me anymore?" He gripped the ring tightly, as if he wanted to crush it. On the other hand, Blake, Darren, and Neville were having dinner at a high-end restaurant. They raised their glasses in a toast. "To Mr. Miller's happiness." Blake grinned slyly. "He shouldn't lose this time, right?" Darren pouted slightly. "Who knows? With love, you can never be sure." They exchanged smiles, their eyes full of well, why? She's for their friend. But Jackson and Jessica Davis didn't know that behind their love story, many unknown challenges awaited them. But at least for now, they were happy, leaning on each other. In the bustling city of Chicago, their story had just begun. And all of this was just the beginning of fate.